So we are here in Bucharest at Ella Center for Excellence with John Armitage. Thank you, John, for being here today and being open to have this talk together and share about your life, about what you do and everything you feel.
Well, it's my pleasure. So just ask away.
I think people in Romania don't know much about your life, about how you came to be the man you are today, and how was your life. Sometimes people don't understand the purpose of challenges in our lives, and I will like for you to talk about the challenges you had in your life and the way they help you to be who you are today.
Well, that could take a long time.
Well, as much as you can to share a little bit with us today.
Okay, well, it's from my childhood really, and in some ways you could say that I had an extremely difficult and challenging time. Some people, when I talk about it, they say, well, it must have been really terrible. And in some ways, I suppose it could have been. Now I don't see it like that. And these challenges actually they assisted me in what I do today, and they made me what I am today. So, I mean, basically, I didn't speak until very, very late, and it's interesting that although my mother's passed away now, even when she was in her 90s, she used to say that she felt very guilty about my childhood. Nobody understood these so-called difficulties that some people had, and she said, well, I was always taking you to the doctor, and the doctor used to say, oh, well, anyway, you know, he's just lazy. And my older sister used to do the talking for me, and when she refused to do it anymore, then my younger sister took over. But when I did start talking, I couldn't speak without stammering every word. And also as well, this gave me a lot of problems at school. And but in some ways, lucky for me, when I was about 6 years old, 7 years old, around that kind of age, my father decided that he would take a contract in Southern Ireland. He was a textile designer, very well known in his trade, woolen cloth. And so we lived in a small town called Wexford for 1 or 2 years, and then we actually moved to County Cork. And it was a very, very small village. There was even no blacktop on the road. There was only 2 houses in the village that had running water. Everybody else got it from the pump. And I was sent to school in the city of Cork. And of course, Ireland being a Catholic country, and my parents being Protestants, being English, Church of England, well, not actually Church of England, but Congregational Church. We were sent to a Protestant school at a church in Cork. Well, that didn't last very long. The teacher couldn't handle it, or couldn't handle me. So then I was sent to the village school. But actually it was brilliant. We learnt everything in Gaelic, and I understood Gaelic well, and it's funny, I could speak Gaelic without stammering. Really interesting.
Yes.
And but being a Catholic school, there was a lot of religion, and when anything to do with religion was being discussed or taught or whatever, I was excluded. Be in the schoolyard or in the cloakroom or whatever, and that for me was perfect, because I've always had contact with multidimensional beings or things, or as I call them, the upstairs department and the angelic kingdom, and so I could just sit and communicate and be with them. Absolutely perfect situation, and also as well, living in this remote country area, we had fantastic freedom.
How did you discover this ability to connect and talk with angelic beings and ascended master is not something that everybody can do?
Well, I didn't actually discover it. To me, it was a part of normal. It was a part of normal life, and I really thought that everybody was in this situation. I really thought that everybody could see these things and so on.
And how did you find out that not everybody can do this?
Well, it kind of came to me in pieces, and I must admit I was extremely surprised. Like I said, I just thought it was part of life on planet Earth, you could say.
How you discovered that you can heal people?
Well, this was another interesting part of the adventure, and when you look back on it, because I found that if I put my hands on an animal or anything like this, that something would happen, and I didn't really consider it to be healing or facilitating healing, as I would say today. Again, I just thought that this was a usual and normal part of everyday life. And again, I was extremely surprised when people said, "Oh, like this boy could do things with animals," or sometimes, maybe I would find an injured bird or something like this. So I'd say again, it was very surprising when I found out that everybody wasn't doing this.
How do you start working with people?
Well, this is rather interesting, really, because I suppose in the late 70s, there was a few of us who had kind of discovered crystals, and quartz crystals I'm talking about. There was 4 or 5 of us really, Western people, who were investigating this. Previously, when I lived in India for a while, I lived in a temple in Vrindavan for a few years. I discovered Ayurvedic remedies, and also as well, I used to sometimes interact with people with hands-on healing. But it was very different, of course, than being in the Western world. And so I started, it just kind of started, and people would come to me and I would put my hands on them and things would happen. And it all sort of built up from there. Really, I didn't have any plans in it all, because I'd left school basically and I couldn't read and write, and I had really no ambition in life. I wasn't programmed to be successful, or I was always told that I'd achieve nothing. And So this I see as another part of the gift. You could say that I didn't have any expectations, so it meant that things could just happen. And over the years it kind of developed, and in 1994 I decided to start really sharing the facilitating healing and self-transformation in love. This is my thing, divine love. This is what I love to share with people and encourage people to do what they can to live in this energy of divine love. But to go back to really how it started, I've been doing some seminars and workshops on crystals, on stargating and things like this. But in '94 I founded the system known as Shambhala Multidimensional Healing, which became very quickly extremely popular.
Yes, all over the world.
Like all over the world. It started off in England, and I was and still am in many ways just amazed what happened. And of course now it's known as something different, because we had to change the name of it because of some problems in America over trademarking and things like this. Now it's known as New Paradigm Multidimensional Transformation.
Yes.
I mean, for me, focusing on facilitating healing isn't really what we should be doing. We should be focusing on freeing ourselves from the limitations of our consciousness and programming. And through that, the ability to facilitate healing is natural.
Yes.
Everybody has it, but they're not using it because they don't understand that they have it.
Exactly, they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know the gift they have inside them.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit how New Paradigm can support people on free themselves?
Well, basically, it's some people say, well, I still don't understand, but it's it's about the love without condition. And if we learn to understand that this energy of divine love is the building blocks of the universe, that is the true essence of everything. If we understand that, and we truly understand it, well, this is how we transform ourselves and how we free ourselves. We see the limitations that we have imposed upon ourselves, and we see the limitations that society has imposed upon us, our parents have imposed upon us, our education system has imposed upon us. And as children we start to believe our elders, and if our elders are not aware of the true essence of the universe, well then they don't share with us the real purpose of life, and the real purpose of life is to live in the energy of divine love and compassion, non-judgment and forgiveness. And through this we can actually assist ourselves in freeing ourselves from the limitations of our minds. And this doesn't mean to say that we have to drop out of society, or we have to withdraw from society or anything like this. It doesn't mean that. We don't have to go and hide in caves or things like we did in past times. That I understand, I see, I know that as we, traverse our path in the world, that actually we just radiate this love, and we also, like I said, learn compassion and forgiveness, and this frees us from a lot of things. It frees us from the effects of our ego, or effects of the most misused words in the English language, me, I, mine, and they're the most commonly used words in any language, and it's always like me, me, when actually, like, we all live together on this planet, whether we're humans, whether we're animals, whether we're plants, whether we're rock, stones, or whatever, and we begin to understand that actually we're all one, and our behavior affects everything.
Yeah.
So this is what I see the essence of this transformation that can take place is.
Yes. So from what I observed in my life and other people's life, there are two ways that we get out from our connection with who we really are. One is becoming self-obsessed, like me, and the other one is forgetting about our own existence, not being aware that we are living beings and there is an inner being inside this skin. And in my experience with New Paradigm, this connection that we are able to learn with our I am presence, it brought a new understanding and a new reality in my life, a new way to see life and to see people and myself too. Can you say something about I am presence and about our, let's say, higher dimensional realities?
Well, in many ways it's not so easy to verbalize it in third dimensional language, and I really, but I'm going to do my best. Well, ultimately, you see, people have a tendency to think, okay, this is me, this body, I am this, and they have no understanding that actually there's a spark of energy living in their body, which is commonly known as the soul, and people have a tendency to forget this if they ever knew. And the reason why we kind of we incarnate in third dimensional bodies and third dimensional realities is to actually experience the third dimensional reality, and also as well to experience, shall we call it, an illusion of separation from self, from your true self. So you have your soul living in your body. Let's work upwards instead of downwards. So you have your soul living in your body, and then there's another part of yourself which we'll call the oversoul. Some people call it the higher self, and there's confusion often in this. Some people think the higher self is the I am presence, but this is not correct. So you have your higher self, and then you have I am presence. Now your I am presence is only another part of you, like there's more of you, and then you have what is commonly known esoterically as the monad, or as I like to call it, the divine self. And the divine self is a spark of consciousness of source, you could say, to put it in simple third dimensional language. So this monadic self or divine self is actually existing in a very fast vibrational reality, or place in time and space, if you like to look at it like that. And to get to the third dimensional reality, you have to keep stepping the vibration down, stepping the energy down. So the divine self actually projects itself into the eighth reality or the eighth dimension and has its existence there. And then it then projects other pieces of itself, which creates a higher self, and then the soul essence, which is into the body. I find it rather difficult in some ways to speak about the exact conditions in multidimensional reality in third dimensional language, because third dimensional language is limited to the third dimension.
Yes.
So some people say, oh, well, that's a good cop-out anyway, John. Okay. And other people say, oh, yes, I understand. When I say a good cop-out, okay, you don't know, so that's a good excuse to say that you can't speak about it in third dimensional language. Always makes me smile. Well, the thing is that one of the things I see about New Paradigm is that it can assist us to become more aware of our multidimensional presences. I mean, there's numerous dimensional realities, and we have a presence in all those realities. In third dimensional language, we often say we have a body in those realities, but then some people think in a 3D way, and they think, oh, I have a body something like this, but actually it's completely different.
Yes.
Our body, it's just a presence energetically. It's not a carbon. It's not a carbon copy of your physical presence. Your physical presence only exists here, in the third dimension.
And being connected with these subtle parts of ourselves, some different feelings, some different senses wake up inside ourselves.
Well, this is it. Like basically most people are living in a five-sense world, and in some ways it's not correct to say that they're a prisoner in a five-sense world, because that implies that they're victims and so on. But for ease of explanations, let's say they're limited to a five-sense world, and a lot of people say, well, if you can't see it, if you can't smell it, if you can't bite it, or whatever, I don't believe it exists. But the thing is, as you start to become more aware of your multidimensional presences, and you start to build a conscious connection, because everybody has the connection, otherwise the physical body would be dead, or what people call dead. You wouldn't be using it anymore. As the conscious connection builds up, you do actually activate other senses. And it's my understanding that actually, like, we have the capabilities to activate 12 senses. So like, we've got numerous senses we're not using, or most people are not using. And what some people say about people like me, who is capable of connecting with other multidimensional beings, like with other parts of myself living in other realities or dimensions, they often say, oh, you've got a sixth sense. Or let's say the telephone rings, pick it up and hello, and somebody on the other end says, yeah, hi, this is Fred, and you say, yeah, I knew it was you. And then people say, oh, you must have a sixth sense. Well, you do.
Yes.
And so this actually assists us in our interaction with what we might call an expanded reality. You see, the five sense, living in a five sense world, limits the way that we can interact, like, with expanded reality. Like some people, like said, that their reality is just five sense. If you can't see it, smell it, touch it, bite it, or whatever, it can't exist. But then in other ways, sometimes the humans are a bit strange, because they'll say to you, oh, cats can see infrared. But they deny that there's anything outside of five senses. Humans can't see infrared.
Yes.
So it's all to do with like how you're programmed and how you choose to relate to reality.
There are animals that they are hunting during the night. They have special view and hearing, and there are different senses.
Yeah, this is it. But then you see humans. Well, they're jaguars, or they're just different than us. But and they deny the existence of what can be seen. But the thing is, what I understand is that like babies and small children still have like very good connections, and they can see energies. I noticed that I can play with small children energetically, or even if they're being pushed along the street in their buggy, I can see them sometimes. Oh, this one's a bit different than the others. They can see the energy around you and so on. And the parents think, what are they looking at?
Yes, because sometimes they don't know, they don't say anything.
Yeah.
I have a little girl that her mother is bringing her to therapy, and all the time I say to her, close your eyes, but she's staying like this, and I can see how she's looking up, and I see that she sees, but she doesn't say anything.
Yeah, sure. But then you see the situation is then that if your parents don't see it and so on, you start talking about it, or you see other beings or whatever, well then they say you have a great imagination, and you have imaginary friends, and things like this. So in the end, actually, you believe them. And you come to believe that your imagination is worthless and it's nothing. So then you start to close down your perceptions of reality. That's what happens.